Genetically modified. Do those words scare you? Is someone here freaking out because I said the words genetically modified? Usually, it strikes fear into some people's hearts. Genetically modified. That's what life is nowadays. That's what I thought I would rant about a little today. And it's been inspired by today's happenings somehow and some way. And you'd think it's unrelated, but trust me, it all links back. So just bear with me here. I'm an Australian, as we have established from my non-existent accent. And here, there's a lot of insects. You have to have a certain level of tolerance to insects to survive in this country, or you just kind of collapse, you implode and self-combust because there's just so many of them around. You'll be in the corner of your room in fetal position, rocking back and forth and crying if you don't have some level of tolerance. Exactly, Giselle. I have no accent. Everyone knows. In fact, as far as insects go, I used to actually be obsessed with caterpillars. I used to really, really like caterpillars. And it's hard for me to imagine that now because now I definitely do not. But when I was a little kid, I had this obsession with caterpillars. I collected them. I had them as like my little pets. I would name them. Oh, this one's squishy, this one's smudgy, this one's green friend, whatever they were. And I had them in little plastic containers. And then, you know, they were my friends in primary school. And there was one particular tree that was just covered in caterpillars. In retrospect, this is disgusting. But as a child, I thought it was great. Can you imagine my poor parents? Right? Can you imagine my poor parents? Like, you have a child, you birth this child, you pour your love into them. You know, you pack them their school lunch with all the utmost care and everything, and then they come home and bring you like a container filled with caterpillars and go, look, I made a friend at school. And you're like, can I return it? This was not the child I was promised. Is there a returns counter? I would like to return the child. You can imagine your friends keeping you in a glass. Oi. Yeah, I used to really, really like caterpillars. That actually didn't work out too well for me because one of the most memorable occurrences of bullying that I had when I was a kid was when one of the young boys squished my pet caterpillars into my backpack. So my backpack had dead squished caterpillars smushied into it. It was nauseatingly disgusting, miserably depressing, because you have to remember I was really invested in these caterpillars. And is this a rant or therapy? Haven't you noticed, Yobbo Bear? My trauma is my content. That's what comedy is. But yum yum yum, is that right? That's what it was. And the best part of it is you know what I was told? You know what I was told as a little girl who's holding up my bag, my backpack with now my squished dead pets all over it? He's flirting with you. That's why he did it, because he likes you. I did not like him. I can tell you right now, I did not like him. Stand up, it's a nervous breakdown in slow motion. Exactly. That's my memory. So I think that may have been what killed my my ability even to cope with the whole idea of like worm-like insects. Jacob, thank you very, very much for the follow. Beatboxing. My child, it's her favorite thing to calm her down is beatboxing, and all I know how to do is boots and cats. That's it. And I'm not even good at it, but it's her favorite thing in the world. So, welcome to the stream. But anyhow, this morning I woke up to, I suppose, the closest equivalent It is a bit better than nothing. It's exactly a bit better than nothing. I woke up to the closest equivalent this morning, and that was maggots. This morning was colored by maggots. Now, many of you here are familiar with my aesthetic. My aesthetic is darkness. So the house is black in most regards. The floor is black, the ceiling is black, a lot of this room is black. You know, our bench tops are black, the roof is black, the bricks are black, our placemats are black, the plates are black, the cutlery is black. There's a lot of black going on. Now, maggots are white. What ends up happening is if you've got maggots crawling over your black floor, you can see them. You can see them. It is not subtle. It is not subtle at all. So we got these little maggots crawling around and I'm like, ugh, I've just lost my appetite for existence. But there be maggots all around the floor. And naturally I turn to my husband and I go, and he goes, oh, fine, grabs the tissue, squishes them, picks them up, puts them in the bin. Any more? I'm like, there's one there, there's one there, there's one on your face. It was beautiful. He is a superhero. He got rid of the maggots. I have to, give credit where credit is due. And that was the story of why my husband's the greatest of all time. But what you won't see is how this relates to genetic modification, right? You might not think that this at all relates to genetic modification, do you? Creepy crawlies, genetic modification. As I said, it all comes full circle, as you'll soon see. When people think of genetic modifications, they usually think of like adding an extra arm to someone, or they think of how our food has been genetically modified through the chemistry to make us all sick from big food. You've got big pharma, you've got big food, and they're just destroying our life forever. We will never be the same again. Merely by eating our Snickers bar, we will grow an extra arm from the center of our chest. It's just a matter of time, and it's because of the genetic modifications. Yes, that's what most people think of, is all that. Apparently, Giselle thinks of fry pans, and I thought my maggot story was weird. But the greater majority of the time when people are genetically modifying crops, they're usually doing it so they can reduce the crop's death rate. That's probably the wrong terminology for this. They're trying to reduce how often insects eat the crops, how often they die, how quickly they spoil. They're basically just trying to get the crops to survive for long enough that you can walk your patootie down to your local Aldi and buy a capsicum on discount. And you want it to be there, unrotted, uncovered in maggots. That's the goal. Most of the time, that's most people's preference. Some people may have a different preference. Most people, that's the preference. So that's how that relates to genetic modifications, because that's actually the majority of what this stuff is being used for. Not actually for big food, destroy the human race. Unfortunately, because that would be a lot more entertaining. Mendelian genetics. Do you guys know that word? Mendelian. I highly recommend memorizing just that word, Mendelian. You know why? Because it will make you sound clever when you're at barbecues or picnics and people are talking about genetics. Mendelian genetics. Yep, that's the Punnett Square bloke, Mendel, Mr. Mendel. He's the one who's known as being the monk who changed science. Something along those lines. Howie Mendel. don't know what his first name is. I'm assuming it's not that guy. Someone's gonna be like, why am I listening to this doofus? I agree. Anyhow, Mendel, I only know the last name, is the guy who came up with the whole dominant, recessive, with the Punnett squares. Looks like I'm doing karate right now. For example, if you've got a bloke with brown eyes and you've got a lady with blue eyes and they do the sexy dance, the child is more likely to have brown eyes because brown is dominant. Yeah. If the bloke has brown eyes and the lady has hazel eyes, when they do the sexy dance, again, more likely to have brown eyes. Except that's not how it works most of the time. Yeah. That's not how that works, because eyes have 16 different genes associated with them, and that's oversimplifying the matter. And I have hazel eyes, and my husband has brown eyes, and our child has blue eyes. Why? Yeah, it's also dependent on what filter you're using on Snapchat. That is possibly the most important determinant. Very true, very true. Yes, fact, not how it actually works. But there are some simple examples, textbook examples you can bring up to make yourself sound clever when you go to picnics, when you go to barbecues. Just remember the word Mendelian and no one will question you, because it is a long word and you sound very smart. Magic, exactly, magic. But yes, genetics, bit more complicated, a lot more like magic. And as I aforementioned, when it comes to things like food, there's been a lot of talk amongst the people who have too much time on their hands about how genetically modified foods are destroying all. So what is genetic modification in food? Let me be your educator here, because people think it's like someone in a lab coat, like sneaking into the fields, injecting and syringing and surgifying, and then probably using something glowing and radioactive and turning it into a real-time science experiment. And there's explosions, and then there's crying, and then there's fire. It's not that exciting. It's just not that exciting, guys. I'm sorry to break it to you. My dreams were also shattered when I found out genetic modification most of the time is when you take one tomato plant and a different tomato plant and use some like tweezers or something to get the pollen from this one, and you put the pollen on the other one, and that's how that works. It's not that exciting. It's something people have been doing for millennia. Basically crossbreeding. So you got one tomato plant where the tomatoes are large and green, and you got another tomato plant where the tomatoes are small and red, and you crossbreed them to get large red tomatoes, or it all goes wrong and you get small green ones and you cry. That's the alternatives there. That's basically it. Just an old bloke in a lab. You know, messing with one plant and another plant and hoping for the best and waiting a very, very long time. It's a surefire way to ruin the eye color of a tomato plant. Exactly. I agree, Great Balls of Land would be better with more lasers and explosions. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. You want to know more about the sexy tomato genetic dance? Oh, baby. It's not as exciting as you think. But that's kind of what they do. And most of the time, it's literally, these tomatoes get moldy too quickly. How can we stop them from going moldy so quickly? these tomatoes attract more insects than the other ones. Maybe we should make the tomatoes all attract less insects. Apparently, it turns out some people like the color yellow. Can we make tomatoes that are yellow in color? That's it. That's it. Right? That's what we got there. Seedless grapes. Oh, seeds are inconvenient. How can we modify them out? That's what we're getting here. That's what we're getting here. Yes, or carrying more crop. Productivity, as it's called in the agricultural industry. Productivity, that thing that collapsed, imploded, and entirely disappearated once I had a child. Anyway, sometimes, however, there are unintended consequences, right? In these crazy mutant plants. Hardcore crazy mutant plants. Ba-dum-bum. The tomatoes are slightly larger. Hardcore. Sometimes there are unintended consequences. And people freak out about this. They're like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. People who have too much time on their hands. Too much time on their hands. But what are some of these unintended consequences? Okay, right. If you take a daddy tomato and a mummy tomato and the two of them do the sexy dance and something goes wrong, 99.9, that's not an official statistic, most of the time what will happen is the progeny, the spawn, the resulting tomato plant will cease to exist. It just won't exist. Most of the time when there's some sort of mutation or something goes wrong, it means it just doesn't exist. You know, crazy person in the lab coat there with the laser putting together this genetically modified plant, and it just fails to thrive. It doesn't end up existing. That's actually what happens most of the time. Sad face. That's a problem. That is a real problem. Can you just imagine Paolo in Italia? He is very proud of his tomato plants, and he wants to make sure that Tonio over the street knows that he has the upper hand when it comes to gardening in his garden. His tomato plants are the best. And then he's there. I don't even know what language that went into eventually. It's like a Romanian Italian now. But he wants to make sure his tomato plants are better. And then when he does this hybrid thing and he genetically modifies or attempts to do so, if the plants don't end up existing, Tonio is going to have the upper hand and Paolo is going to cry into his pasta. So that's no good. That's no good. Tomato shaming, exactly. We don't agree with that. So it is a problem if the things don't work out. The second thing that could happen, and this has been reported on, is that there is a depletion of nutrients, right? A depletion of nutrients. And this is the thing that the people with too much time on their hands are crying about. There is scientific evidence, actual basis in this. There are currently less vitamins, minerals, calcium, etc. in the tomatoes and all of the vegetables, etc., fruits, whatever, than there used to be in the past. Thanks to this hybridization process, we've actually made our plants less healthy. Yeah, that's a serious issue. That's a serious issue for Janice on her whole foods diet. 99.9% of us doesn't matter. Because right now, it's not about the fact that there is a percentile less calcium in the cucumber, because we're not eating the cucumber anyway, because somewhere along the line, yeah, they invented genetic modifications, but more importantly, they invented Kit Kats. And I think right now, most people are just trying to like forego the Kit Kat and eat the cucumber, and that's just not working out. Because have you had a Kit Kat? They're so delicious. They melt in your mouth, and then there's the crispy wafery amazingness, and I'm drooling, and it's so good. I understand, clearly. I don't understand the people that go for the cucumbers, clearly. Too much time on their hands. If anything, this whole genetic modification thing and the depletion of nutrients, they need this in their life. Because they need something. Come on now. They don't have Kit Kats. But we've got two of the 3 points I wanted to make here, because there's 3 things that could happen with these genetic modifications, unintended consequences. So the first one is that the plants are more likely to just fail to exist, like me, in the mornings when I've just woken up. The second is the nutrient depletion, which matters to like one single lady called Janice, who's been eating whole plant-based food and probably has an eating disorder. And then there's also the final one, and this is the most important issue. This is the most important issue, right? The most important issue is we are wasting our genetic modification superpowers. Wasting them. We have these incredible powers. We could create chimeras. You know what that is? That's like monster beasts that have like an arm from that animal and like a head from that animal and a tail from that animal, and they spit fire and they have laser eyes. And instead of doing that, what are we doing? We're making the tomatoes slightly more red. Sad-faced teardrop. What a waste of our abilities. We should be making sentient rainbow glitter tomatoes that have like ballet abilities and extensive kung fu prowess. And they should be having also within their mind brains, which they now have, extensive knowledge of delicious combinations of seasoning with tomatoes. The tomato should be sitting on the chopping board and telling us how it should season itself. It should be there being like, hello there, I'm a tomato, but I taste especially good with oregano. Yes, you should use oregano. Because what are they doing now, the tomatoes? They're slightly more red. Not good enough. That really is, in my opinion, the great catastrophe here. Do you not agree? Yes, and basil. Yeah. Basil, oregano. What do we want? Pre-seasoned meat? When do we want it? Now? You want to genetically modify the chicken to come with seasoning? That's a new level. That's a new level right there.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell, because clicking things is fun. If you want to see the full versions of these Twitch streams, then you can on my channel, twitch.tv/MaryAmber. And if you want to catch VODs, if you've missed streams, then check out my Patreon, Ninja Club, patreon.com/MaryAmber.